Welcome to our Fireside Chat series. Today we'll be talking about innovation in healthcare. We're joined by two guests, Josh Coleman, the managing partner at Treacy Company by Cherry Bekaert, and our healthcare practice leader. And we also have Brie Riley, the director of innovation at Henry Ford Health Systems. Happy to have both of you here today. I think the first topic that we'll talk about is AI in healthcare. So Josh, I think I'll pass this question over to you first, and just curious about what you're seeing in market right now with your clients and how AI is being used in healthcare and innovative trends that you're seeing.
Sure. Thanks, Wes. So I mean, I can't swing a cat without bumping into AI these days in healthcare. There's AI it's becoming to mean so many things that I've kind of lost the thread on what it actually means and what it is. You're seeing it on the capital equipment and imaging and any sort of devices around basically ways to improve quality, improve performance. And that's good. I mean, there's a certain ceiling at which hardware and technology improvements are actually a lower ROI than improving the software, and imaging in particular is a great example. So at some point, AI should deliver on the promise of getting us the same quality image for half the cost of the machine. And that's going to have to be very disruptive in the imaging and the capital spaces. It's to stick with imaging. The other piece is AI is also coming for the jobs, right? And part of the promise of AI is that you can reduce costs, you can improve workflows. Now, part of that should lead to some efficiencies, better care, the ability for caregivers to provide more time or more care. But as we know, what happens in healthcare is everyone's always looking for cost savings. So what it also may end up doing is replacing some humans, whether that's, I hope not, but maybe nurses, radiologists, even some specialist prep time, some of technicians. We're going to have to be very careful on and keep a focus on quality so that AI doesn't just become one more cost cutting measure as opposed to a quality and care outcome improvement measure. That's probably what I'm most concerned about.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I echo every single thing that you're sharing with AI being everywhere. It seems like we look at hundreds of startups a year that incubate here at Henry Ford, and every single one has an AI component to it. You see a device or a widget, there's an AI predictive component to it, even where you think it wouldn't exist. And then you have your traditional dashboards and platforms and things of that nature where there's also AI. And I think about two drastically different case studies that are pilots that we have ongoing right now at Henry Ford. The first being in a wearable. Everyone has a wearable, everyone has an AI component that is looking at predicting events. But what makes the one unique that we're currently working with here at Henry Ford is that it's supposed to initially alleviate the spaghetti syndrome in the operating room. A few years ago, we were tasked with this problem statement from our head of anesthesia, and they said, hey, can you find me a device that will measure all the patient vitals in the operating room so we don't have all these cords near the patient field? And we said, yeah, sure, we can go out and solve that problem. So we went to Israel, where we actually have we have a program over there, not anything formally boots on the ground, but there's a lot of innovation in that ecosystem. So we went over there with this problem statement and said, what technologies can we bring back to the United States and commercialize here? And we had a company named Atlas and Biomed that came along. And they said, well, we have this patch that you wear in your chest, and it'll measure all of your vital signs in the operating room, but we're going to create an AI component. And we're like, okay, well, why is that important? And the way they had constructed this patch is that it would not only alleviate this spaghetti syndrome in the operating room, but it can be worn throughout the entire patient care journey. So from the minute that you walk into a Henry Ford hospital, when you're getting evaluated, when you're going through radiology, when you're in the procedural pre-surgical space, you can be wearing this patch. It'll be measuring your vital signs. In theory, you'd wear it throughout the procedure or surgery, and you could wear it at home. And the fact that you could have one patch that would not only measure all of your vital signs, but predict when an episode would happen, we found that to be really novel. We've seen all sorts of wearables, even in Apple Watches. However, they didn't quite have the same breadth of capabilities that this technology had. We ran a pilot that ended, our first pilot ended about a year ago. And we found it to be wildly successful from a validation study standpoint. And now they're looking to feed this AI with data, which is the most important point right now, that they're going to remain competitive in this landscape, in this very saturated landscape.
Great. Yeah, I think on top of AI being a hot button issue, another issue that's really top of mind for a lot of hospitals is returning to profitability, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. So Brie, I'm curious specifically at Henry Ford, how have you managed from an administrative side and from a care side returning to profitability after the pandemic?
Yeah, I think there are two driving factors that all health systems, not even Henry Ford specifically, are seeing that is impeding the ability to be profitable. And Henry Ford actually was profitable last year. It was a difficult year, but we actually did quite well. And what we did is a couple of things. Is number one, we focused on what we were good at from a revenue generating standpoint. So if that is shifting personnel to the operating room into our procedure rooms, that became a focus. It's really focusing on delivering the services that we're best at, but that are also influential in reimbursements in the money making space for the hospital and health system. The other part that's talked about a lot is nursing costs. With the cost of travel nursing, it has skyrocketed, and retaining nurses is tougher than ever. I mean, how many times have you heard about case studies where a nurse leaves a health system as an employee and returns to that same hospital at triple the rate because now they're going through a travel agency? So one of the things that we've really been proactively pursuing is understanding, how do we retain our nurses? How do we keep them happy? How do we support them, make them feel safe, make them feel valued, and make sure that they're not feeling overwhelmed? There's a number of technologies we're looking at right now, everything looking at from patient safety and provider safety, and predicting potential events on the nursing floors, to even looking at robots. Everyone has talked about, well, when are robots going to start delivering medications or blankets or meals? And that's happening. A week ago, actually, I believe yesterday, Henry Ford announced that we're developing a new campus. Our current building's over 100 years old in Detroit, and the hallways are narrow, which makes implementing this kind of technology hard. But I think what we'll be seeing in the future is, how can we leverage things such as robots to reduce unnecessary tasks that will keep our nurses happier, that will help us save time and money, but really kind of takes a full circle approach to keeping patients safe, nurses safe, and eliminating unnecessary tasks.
Great. I think when we think about that return to profitability, Josh, how do you view innovation as a tool or a lever to pull to address some of those issues? And also, how do you view innovation and its place inside of healthcare?
So often we say innovation in healthcare, a lot of us think about all these startups, the venture-funded world of new breakthrough technologies and AI, 3D printing, robotics, you name it, right? And it's really, frankly, very well funded. And a lot of these startups are well-funded little companies looking for their first customer and going around to hospitals and just trying to find someone who will let them prove their concept. And so it's a very weird market in some ways. I think when we talk about innovation in healthcare, and Brie can speak to this more than I can, I want to get away just from technology. And innovation should be applied to any kind of organizational objective that a health system has. You can apply it to revenue cycle management. You can apply it to nurse satisfaction and retention. You can apply innovation to physician burnout, to some really important issues that might have a technology component, but aren't on the face of them a technology R&D type of challenge. And I'd love to see the same attention of big I innovation on population health and on physician happiness and care and quality outcomes as on kind of making money with the next technology.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. It's almost kind of goes back to the population health issue. In Detroit, we're infamous for that. Our inequities in population health have been intensified. And when we look at innovation, one of the programs that my team offers is we're actually partnering with local churches. We're going into the community. The churches are a big cornerstone of Detroit culture. They have these massive events every month where there are hundreds of people and businesses and farmers markets. And what Henry Ford is doing is we're actually setting up a table at these places, not with the intention of trying to make money necessarily from patient revenue, but trying to promote public health. So we have these mobile health units that imagine a trailer that has been modified to become a small patient room, but going out into the community and saying, hey, have you had your checkup? Or, hey, do you know how to pay for your health here? Do you know what's covered? And as much as we want to talk about the greatest and latest technologies, I think going out, meeting people where they are physically, and providing healthcare delivery services and education is a great way to help health systems not only improve on their costs, but improve patient care, improve patient outcomes, and really focus on our mission of delivering the highest quality, safest care possible to our patients.
Yeah, I think what we heard a lot there is, being innovative outside of just the products that are delivered inside of these hospitals. But also what I heard there, Brie, was a little bit of layering in of partnerships, specifically talking about how you're engaging your local community. So I'm wondering, what role do partnerships play, not only at the community level, but also the corporate level, and how you're viewing innovation at Henry Ford Health and just overall in your role?
Yeah, I love the word partnerships, and for a number of reasons, because the meaning of the term has changed so much, especially in the innovation landscape. So it's something I always kind of take a step back at first, because many people talk about partnerships. It's typically sales, right? I look at my LinkedIn messages and I get a dozen pings a day from companies large and small asking to partner. What it means at Henry Ford Innovations is I always tell people you can buy the latest and greatest technologies. That's great. That's not my team. You can do clinical research trials, and that's great, but that's not my team either. Really, the innovation and what corporate partnerships means to Henry Ford Innovations is working in that earlier stage. So it's the question we ask ourselves is, what if, right? How many times have you purchased something and wondered, wow, I wonder if someone talked to a doctor before designing this. I wish someone would have called me because this is so poorly designed. Those are kind of pain points that we're trying to solve. So before talking about specific partnerships, I kind of want to set that context, is that we work with the earliest stage of innovation, even like the napkin sketch ideas that someone drew at lunch. Specifically within my team, there's partly partnering with startups and doing kind of an incubation program, and that's great. That's very much what we do. What was also announced, though, within the last year at Henry Ford specifically, is that we actually have a collaboration with Premier Applied Sciences. Folks may be familiar with Premier Incorporated, and they started out as a GPO, or a group purchasing organization, think Costco, but for healthcare supplies. My team works with the applied sciences side, which is really more focused on data, research, and things of that nature, rather than group purchasing. And really what this Premier partnership has enabled is it's allowed us to work with some of the larger name companies as well, and industry and life science partners. So what my team has been doing for the last year is we've kind of served as the front door to partnering with Henry Ford experts, Henry Ford clinicians, IT experts, where if X industry partner has an idea for a new alert or a new drug that they want to do a trial on, my team is now the one that's going into the health system, finding the appropriate clinicians and technical experts, and kind of drawing that line between industry and the clinicians, handling the business paperwork, working with our legal teams, our ethics teams, to make sure that we can facilitate these studies in the fastest, safest way possible, covering a whole wide range of issues. So industry partnerships, they take a lot of different shapes, especially even at Henry Ford within my little team of 10 full-time employees. It can be anywhere from startup incubation to partnering with large multi-billion-dollar life science companies to kind of facilitate the next latest and greatest trial.
Yeah, that's great, but it's, you said something there, which was, in some ways, the innovation group becomes the front door, right? You become an access point around what startups, which partnerships, what tech companies, which corporate partners, what other partners are going to be involved in some of the, challenging internal complex challenges that exist within the system. And you hear the concept digital front door or the technology front door, and you probably have 1,000 startups plus knocking on that door. How do you triage? How do you figure out which ones are actually going to be useful?
Yeah, it's the $1,000,000 question that we've been trying to answer. I love that question. Because it's essentially, when we have startups, I actually have them apply through an online form. And I think taking an elementary approach to it has yielded the best outcomes. When I say an elementary approach, going back to the foundation of what is the problem that you are solving, how are you solving it, what is your technology? I can't tell you how many times I've been told about a great solution, but I'm like, what is it? Is it a device? Is it an AI platform? Is it both? So understanding what the problem is, what the technology is, what the solution is, um, will help me triage appropriately internally, but also understanding what collaboration are they looking for. A few minutes ago, I talked about how you can go to our supply chain team and they purchase the latest and greatest technologies. That's great. You can go to research for a fully baked protocol. And anything that's really early lives within my team. So it's taken a lot of sorting and vetting and kind of learning, but also coordinating internally of what belongs where. And it's also meaning that we have to be really aligned internally as a company to make sure that we're leaning on each other and partnering with each other. One of the things that my team and I've also been working on is we're going to every single department. We have 40,000 employees, and we're pitching what Henry Ford Innovations does and what services we have. Because how many times is a doctor getting a call from a large industry partner that wants to do a trial, but the physician doesn't know where to go? So by focusing our marketing efforts internally as well as externally, and making sure that people know to call Henry Ford Innovations and that we can help triage internally, has been vital to understanding where do things go when, and who is the right person for any given opportunity.
And when we're talking about, the incubation of new technologies, when we're talking about venture capital funding, one of the most prevalent topics or technologies that we see coming up is 3D printing. So Josh, wondering, from your experience and with your clients, how you've seen 3D printing, work its way into the conversation, but also how you're seeing 3D printing and its role in healthcare and improving quality of care for patients.
I think what's exciting about 3D printing is basically, more custom type of device. So, or let's take an implant, right? Let's take a knee implant or orthopedic, right? If you can have not just 5 sizes, which is what a lot of even the leaders offer now, but have a custom made, built for your hip implant, that's pretty exciting. And if you could do that in a cost effective way, or even do it such that the hospitals can be part of the manufacturing equation, that's interesting. I think we're a ways away from that, but it's got potential. It's an exciting potential. Others are printing organs. I think there's a real cellular and material challenge, of course, that has to be just figured out here. But it's the possibilities there, I think, are exciting for anyone who cares about healthcare and outcomes. Where I'm not sure the 3D printing will have as much impact as, are there other devices or capital goods or other elements of kind of the manufacturing value chain that eventually ends up in a hospital that could either be improved by customization or lower cost from 3D printing? And I'm not sure there. Maybe Brie has some insights.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's, when you look at, there's the direct cost, but there's also the cost of quality of care. Henry Ford Innovations started 3D printing pretty intensely 9-10 years ago. And we started in the structural heart space. And this was interesting. Essentially, what we'll do is we'll take a CT scan or an MRI, and we said, what if we could turn this into a 3D life-size replica? And we started looking at valve replacements. So we would 3D print the patient's heart, and we look at it. And before we started 3D printing, a valve replacement, you'd guess and check. They come in packets of 3. You try to get the valve replacement right on the first try, but not necessarily. You just to go back in and out of the patient field. And really, what printing that heart did is you could get the valve size right on the right try. So instead of guessing the size of it, you would have full knowledge going into it. You could also see anomalies that you wouldn't see on a 2D sphere. What ended up happening, we ended up patenting this process and licensing it out to a group called Materialize. They're based in Europe. And now it's a software module that is being used on a global scale. And what studies have shown is that the direct cost of 3D printing was not cheap for patient pre-surgical planning, but we saved 30 minutes from OR. We saved 30 minutes OR time. That's 30 minutes less under anesthesia. That's 30 minutes less of that space being utilized. So it ended up being a huge cost saver for us in the long haul. The quality outcomes and metrics were dramatic. It was very exciting to see how our patients were recovering and performing during the procedure as well. We've since expanded this program to looking at complex cancer cases, looking at complex orthopedic cases. So we've used it as a tool that, although we're not implanting yet or bioprinting yet, there's been great use cases where we're looking at patient anatomy and understanding how can we understand the anatomy better before we actually enter the patient field.
Great. I think a lot of the topics that we've discussed today are along that line of, improving quality of care for the patient generally. Brie, I'm wondering, what else are you seeing from a macro trend level view, just, in healthcare in general, medical technology, et cetera?
Yeah, I think these are two trends that get talked about a lot, but they get talked about a lot because they're vital. And number one is we've talked about nurses leaving the workforce. I was reading a survey that said that in 2022, 1/3 of nurses said that they were probably going to leave the industry. And I think there's still data being collected to see if that was true or not. But there's that pain point A with an aging population. And that's a nasty combination. I think a lot of the issues that we're looking at with labor shortages, we're just getting started. Especially in Detroit, where we have an aging population compared to the rest of the country, that's also an unhealthy population. I think a lot of those issues, no matter how hard we fight in terms of public health and in terms of labor retention, this is really the beginning of a trend over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So those are the two biggest trends I see right now. I think technology-wise, we've seen a lot in patient care in terms of AI and things of that nature, but I think we'll start to see improvements in the administrative side. So looking at supply chain, looking at revenue cycle. The funny thing about healthcare is that in a lot of ways, we're 5 to 10 years behind everyone else. So you'll get some of the things from hospitality, having an enhanced personalized hotel stay. Many of those hospitality technologies are being integrated into healthcare. You look at lean operations within automotive over the last few decades. Many of those are being integrated into healthcare. So I think as we look at what will the technology trends be in healthcare looking out, it's going to be really focused not only on the clinical side, but I think there'll be greater attention to detail on the operational side, such as supply chain and revenue cycle specifically.
Yeah, great points, Brie. It's, on my side, working more with the manufacturers, the medical devices, imaging, those types of companies. It's a hard time right now because there's so much, these technologies hold so much disruptive promise, and we know that things are going to move. We don't know when they're going to move. Just take AI, robotics, big data, bioprinting, some of the things we've talked about today. Those things will happen in some amount of time, but it's going to be 5 years? Is it going to be 10 years? Will it just be marginal in 10 years and not really have a systemic effect for two more decades? Maybe. And I think what a lot of companies struggle with is, how do we stay relevant in the conversation without making bets that are so big that we're risking too much money, taking on too much risk? We're not serving our shareholders or our employees by taking on too much risk, but at the same time we're in the conversation and we're at the leading edge. And it's a dance that a lot of companies are struggling with right now. Take AI specifically, and I know a lot of those companies would love to just engage in these types of conversations with health systems. Share, here's where we're at, here's where we're seeing the movement, here's what we think the timelines are, and to the degree that that collaboration can happen in a way that's productive both for the manufacturers and the health systems, I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the earlier this conversation is going to happen, the better. One of the points I always talk about is I wish someone would have called me before I can't come and sell this to you. And I think that's so vital, and innovation programs across the US are growing within healthcare systems. There's more and more. I think a couple of years ago, when I looked at the stats, there were about 6,000 hospitals and 80 innovation programs. And I'm sure that number has gone up a bit since then. But as we look at trying to get a better marriage of industry into healthcare, I think it's vital if they're going to actually create technologies that solve real problems and that we're actually going to address these macro trends, especially as we look at returning to profitability. The earlier they can happen, the better. The term my team and I like to use is called swimming upstream. We want to swim upstream with the for-profit side and build technologies that can actually be integrated. We don't necessarily want to be the only person buying it when it hits the shelves. We want to be the people who are designing it alongside them.
You touched on this earlier, but I know a lot of, at least certainly the kind of clients I work with will be interested. How do they engage with the head of innovation? What's the best way to kind of start collaborating with folks like you in health systems across the country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think when I try to find startups, it comes from a combination of me reaching out to various venture capitals, incubators, accelerators. We attend conferences. We give talks at conferences. I've got 2 or 3 talks coming up this spring. And, I encourage people to just come up to me. So let's just talk about it. Every startup we get, we at least look at, even if they're looking to purely sell to us, we take the time and we review them, because we don't want to be the health system that misses out on a really great opportunity, on a really great solution. I think that's taken a lot of internal culture change across, it's the same for any healthcare organization, of normalizing this culture of innovation. So if they're going to reach out, maybe they don't have a VC yet, but going to a conference is great. Even doing a cold reach out, we have a processes in place where I'm willing to look at it. Every LinkedIn message I get, folks trying to reach out, I look at it. I really do, because I don't want Henry Ford to miss out. So I think if you don't ask, the answer is no. And I know the startups that will win are really good and they really take that to heart. So reach out. We have a way of vetting everyone. That being said, understand what the problem you're solving is, understand what you want, and then be able to articulate what your technology actually is and does. Because those kind of few fundamental things, it's really rare when a startup can articulate all 4 of those really well. And it's so basic, but healthcare is a complicated place to be working within. And I think people get lost in what's possible rather than like, what are we actually doing and what do we actually need to learn and grow?
Well, Brie, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your continued success at Henry Ford Health and the innovation you're bringing to Detroit and to healthcare more broadly. You guys are really doing cutting edge work and finding some real innovations there. So we congratulate you and keep it up.
Thank you so much. And thank you and to Wes for having me. It's a great delight, a great honor. I appreciate everyone's time today. And yeah, look forward to hopefully finding some great companies out of today's conversation even as well.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Brie, for joining. It's great to have these fireside chats. Like Josh said, congrats again, Brie, on everything. Thanks for joining. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.